This is the BiggerPockets podcast, show 292.
You're listening to BiggerPockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.
What's going on, everyone? This is Brandon Turner, today's host of the BiggerPockets podcast, here with my co-host, Mr. David Green. What's up, buddy?
What is going on with you, dude?
I asked you first.
Yeah, you did, and you called me buddy, so I should answer that. I actually just got off the phone with my contractor. I have a deal that I closed on a couple weeks ago, and we put the finishing touches on the rehab that we're going to be doing, and we got everything all squared away. So wiring over the money today, and we should be starting that soon, and I should have an update for you every week on how that's going.
Fancy smancy. Well, cool. Well, anyway, let's move on, because I don't want to talk about myself at all. Today's show, let me talk about today's show real quick. Today's show, I said this at the end of the show after we're done recording. Look, at the very end, I said, this was one of the most fun episodes I've had recording the show in a long, long time. Today's guest is just incredibly high level. I mean, just crushing it. I mean, over 100 deals he'll do this year alone. But he's got such a good way of explaining it and looking at his business in a very cool way. So you guys are going to love that a lot. So stay tuned for that, for an interview with Ryan. But before we get to that, got a little bit of housekeeping to get through. First of all, it's today's quick tip.
All right, today's quick tip is the right way to approach a mentor. Let's start with the wrong way. Do not come up to someone you don't know and say, "Will you be my mentor?" It reminds me of a book that I read as a kid called "Will You Be My Mother?" where I
read it all the time.
Rosie likes that one.
She loves that one.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear, "Will you be my mentor? Will you be my mentor?" Because we don't know you yet, and you might not be a good fit for our personality, or you might just not be a good person. It's hard to tell. So what we've decided is when people approach us and ask for help, guidance, mentorship, whatever, the first question we're going to ask is, have you read my book? Now, this is not because we're egotistical people who want to make everybody go buy our books.
Hey,
this is because... Well, maybe you, Brandon, is, but I really don't care about that a whole lot. But I'm also not the prolific author that Brandon is, so I can't. Wow. What I would say is when I approach somebody who's a couple levels ahead of me and I want to move ahead, I will say to them, I'd love to talk with you about something specific, fill in the blank. I read your book and I loved these 3 things that were in it, right? Now that person I'm talking to knows I'm not wasting their time. I've already invested some of my time and energy, so I have some skin into the game of this relationship. And there's a very specific thing we want to talk about. When someone says, "Can I pick your brain?" that is an open-ended question that may never end. It may turn into 3 hours of you wanting to just ask us questions and learn everything you can because you're too lazy to go read a blog post or do some research yourself. So building relationships is a huge part of today's show, and you're going to see just how profitable relationships can be. Brandon and I want to help people who want to start doing that. One of the best ways is if you're approaching someone and you're interested in them, read their book first and open the dialogue with, "I read your book and I loved specific bullet points that are in it." Then make your pitch on how you'd like to get to know that person or what you're proposing.
Wow, that was a very long quick tip.
Yeah.
I liked it. Yeah, very, very important. Building mentorships is so valuable. I was reading a book the other day. I don't remember what it was called, but in there they talked about one of the things that separates successful people from none, which is the topic I'm fascinated by, is that they have mentorship. There was scientific study done that you have somebody that you can look up to and talk to. And so it is valuable. And we're not talking about paid $50,000 mentors. I'm talking about people you can trust and talk to. And anyway, there you go. All right, and we do talk about relationships a lot on today's show. In fact, I would say that's a secret to Ryan's success. With that, we got to get on with this thing. Make sure you guys show up to this week's upcoming webinar. I'm doing a webinar on how to achieve financial freedom or how to retire early through real estate. We'll talk about how to quit your job, how to build up that cash flow, talk about a number of different ways to do it. Sign up at biggerpockets.com/webinar. And that's pretty much all we got today. So, yeah, why don't we get to today's interview? So today's guest is Ryan Pineda. Am I saying his last name right? Pineda. Ryan Pineda. Yeah, he'll kill me for saying it wrong. It's fantastic. Like I said, one of my favorite episodes we've done in a long time. One of my favorite podcast episodes ever. Super inspiring guy, young guy doing over 100 flips this year. You guys are going to love it. So we talk a lot about deal finding, a lot about building relationships, working with the MLS, wholesalers, all that. So without further ado, let's get what?
If they like Ryan's episode, which they will, because Ryan is awesome. He actually wrote a book called Flip Your Future. And I would highly recommend looking into that, because when you guys hear this guy talk, you're going to see exactly why Brandon and I like this guy so much. He's got it together, and he's got a system that anybody can follow.
Yeah, and we'll put a link to his book. He's got a new book out. We'll put his link in the show notes, or just go to Amazon and type in Flip Your Future and pick it up. So with that, let's get to the show with Ryan. All right, Ryan, welcome to the BiggerPockets podcast. Good to have you here.
Hey, I'm happy to be here.
So you and I have been Facebook friends for quite some time. I don't know if I requested you or you requested me, but we have been Facebook buddies for a while. But I don't actually know much about you other than I constantly see like, buying a new deal. Look at this thing. Look at this awesome thing. Hey, I wrote a book. Like all these cool things. And I'm like, we got to get this guy on the show and figure out what's going on. So that's what we're doing today. So why don't we start at the beginning? Where'd you come from? What'd you do before real estate? How'd you get into this game?
All right, man, from the beginning. So my mom was a realtor ever since I was alive, man. So I kind of grew up in the game, and, she wasn't much of an investor, just mainly on the realtor side. So, I mean, just to cut everything to the chase, like I was a baseball player growing up. I had no ambitions to be a realtor, to be an investor. Like I was just going to play in the big leagues, and that was it. And so I got drafted by the Oakland A's, and everything was going according to plan. And, I realized real quick that minor league baseball players don't get paid anything. Like I was making $1,200 a month, and I was like, well, I need to figure out another job. So I got licensed, and I was 21 years old at the time. And that was my first job back in 2010, just being a realtor in the off season and then playing baseball during the season. And so, it was a tough time back in 2010, especially in Vegas, because, we had just hit the recession and prices were like so cheap. So even if you sold a house, it was like, what are you going to make? So, I just was a realtor, and, I kind of struggled for a while because I wasn't good at it. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't have a mentor or anything. So long story short, me and my cousin ended up buying our first house in 2011, a year later. And it was just a little bachelor pad, man. Like, I just remember we had so many good times at it, and we were just, being 21, 22-year-old kids. And a couple years later, we sold it, and it was like, whoa, we just made a lot of money. And I don't even think we bought it right. We got appreciation. We bought it really low. And then I was like, man, I need to do that again. Like, I just made way more than I did as a realtor selling this house. So I bought another one, and, I rented it out. I ended up going to play baseball. So, I was just chilling, getting some income. And then a few months later, the tenant was like, hey, I want to buy this. I was like, all right, make me an offer. And sure enough, they made me an offer. I sold it, made like 25 grand off of it. I was like, man, I made way more than a baseball player than as a realtor. I'm like, I got to figure out how to do this. So, it's 2014, and I'm married. Me and my wife, we're celebrating our 1-year anniversary, and we'd bought our new house for her and I to live in. And I'm like, man, I really want to sell this house. But, I mean, I know you're married, Brandon. Are you married, David?
No, sir.
Okay, so.
Just married to the game.
Married to the game, man. So, after, we bought our house, I was thinking about selling it because, I'm seeing the money, and I'm like, man, we could cash out, get some money. And she's like, no. And so I'm like, okay, well, my house flipping career is kind of over because I didn't know any other way to buy a house other than a 30-year loan. And so we struggled, man. She was in college, and, I was only making $1,200 a month as a baseball player. I wasn't a very good realtor, and, I couldn't flip the house. And so I started flipping couches, man. I started flipping appliances. Literally.
Wow.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Dude, so I'll give you the 1-minute version. So I bought a bunch of storage units, or I rented them, little 10 by 30 units, and we ended up just buying and selling couches on Craigslist for like a couple of years. I bought a truck on Craigslist to do it. And dude, I mean, it wasn't bad money. It was just a hustle though,
So David thinks this is really funny.
Dude,
So you
I'm telling you, man.
would you buy them wholesale and then like sell them retail? Or are you talking like you buy from one guy who's like got pea stained couch and you go and sell it that to somebody else?
All right, it was this simple. I would be on Craigslist every day. I would find a couch for like $100. I'd take it to my storage unit, take all the covers off, go wash them, take another picture of it the next day, sell it for $300. Like it was like clockwork.
That's awesome.
That's what's so funny is I'm picturing you like, I'm looking for distressed couches. If you know anyone with a distressed couch to sell.
We buy distressed couches. Yeah.
Like trademarking couch flip, hashtag couch flipper. And you're like, it doesn't matter the condition. Homeless people are fine. Bring us any pea stained, flea infested couch. The worse, the better. And I've got a special rehab team that can upholster anything. That is just hilarious to me that you're a couch flipper. But not only that you like, that just speaks to the drive that you have. You know, if I knew nothing about you and I heard that you were doing that, I'd be like, that's somebody who's going to succeed because he's doing something new that no one's done before. You actually said you made money at it. So you found a way to make it work. You learn these fundamentals that then you went and actually applied to houses where you're making great money now. And it kind of reminds me of your career in baseball where you started off in the minor leagues, you learned the fundamentals and you never made it to the big leagues, but you did that exact same thing with house flipping instead.
Yeah, 100%. And so like, you know, the couch flipping thing, you know, it provided a living and it was cool, but you know, like who wants to flip couches the rest of their life? Like there's no purpose or fulfillment in it other than just making a buck. And so, you know, I had this revelation on our 1-year anniversary and I'm watching TV. We're over in New Orleans watching the Packers play. They're my team. And
oh, come on.
Who's your team?
Minnesota
Broncos?
Vikings. Minnesota Vikings.
No.
Oh, man.
Minnesota Vikings. Come on.
That's tough. Well, you guys got Kirk Cousins, so you might be okay. But yeah, so I ended up watching this video commercial for this guru. I'm not going to say who. And I was like, man, I know this is a scam. Like, you know, I'm always skeptical of everything. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to just research it. So I just get on Google. I type in seminar scam. And the first thing that pops up is BiggerPockets.
Boom.
And I'm like, what is BiggerPockets? And so like I start typing like, is BiggerPockets a scam? I was like, dude, I don't know what this is. And so I start getting into it and reading the post and they're like, yeah, like that's a scam. They're going to upsell you, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, good thing I didn't buy it. And they're like, but all you need to do is just listen to the podcast. You just need to go read this book. And they mentioned your book, Brandon.
Yes.
Low and Money Down, or
Yeah, the
Low
No
and No Money Down. And so I picked up that book. I picked up Jay Scott's book, and I read it, in a day. I read both of them. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, this is the answer I've been looking for because I knew how to find deals. I just didn't know how to fund them. That was my main thing. And so I was like, man, there's these hard money lenders. There's these private money lenders. This is crazy. And so that was the end of 2014. I was like, all right, I'm going all in 2015. And so I ended up I only had 10 grand in the bank, and luckily we didn't have any debt yet other than her student loans. But I was like, all right, well, 10 grand's not going to do it. I don't have a private money guy. Like, I got to go hard money. And so I was like, all right, I'm just going to max out all my credit cards. So I maxed out all my credit cards.
Which was not a chapter in the No and Low Money Down book. That was not a chapter, but, it works.
To give you what actually gave me the idea was the seminar, because people were like, yeah, they'll teach you how to like raise your credit card limit just to buy their seminar. I was like, that's messed up. I was like, but what if I did that to, go buy a house? Then it makes sense. And so I ended up doing that. I ended up cash advancing 50 G's. And I was like, okay, well, now I just got to find a deal. So I ended up finding a deal in January. I bought it. It took about 40 grand of that 60 that I had remaining. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm all in now. And a couple weeks later, I found another deal. I was like, well, I got this 20 here. I only need like 15 to buy it. This is like a real easy, like as is flip. And I was like, well, I'm all in. I might as well just really push all in. So I bought that one too. And yeah, man, it was kind of nerve wracking, I didn't plan to buy two. I was like, I'll buy one, take it slow, whatever. But I knew it was a good deal. And so a few months later, end up selling them both, made about 40 grand. I was like, wow, dude, I just had 10 grand in the bank and now I got 50. This is like unbelievable. I was like, I'd have to flip so many couches to freaking make that much money, And so I was like, okay, this house flipping thing is the way to go. Instead of making $200 on a couch, why not make $20,000 on a house? And so, yeah, man, that was the beginning of my career and, my true house flipping career. And, that year in 2015, I ended up buying 5. And, that was all I could buy with the money that I had. And then in 2016, I bought 20. Same thing, just all hard money. I kept just being frugal and saving my money. I was still maxing out my credit cards, always to just buy more deals. 2017, I finally got my first private lender. I was like, Brandon, I did it, dude. I got a private lender. And that was what really allowed me to start scaling. And so last year in 2017, I ended up buying 53 homes, and, it was great. And then this year now we've already bought 60 plus homes. We'll probably do over 120. So, man, things have been growing quick.
Wow. That's incredible. So you went from 5 to 20 to 53, and now you'll hit over 100 this year. Are they all in the Vegas area?
So the majority are in Vegas. I buy in Big Bear, California too. I've got some Airbnbs up there, and I do some flips up there, and then I've got some duplexes in other states, those little cheap ones that people talk about. And I could go more into detail about those. Those are funny, but for the flipping, yeah, everything's pretty much in Vegas.
All right, so I want to unpack this a little bit. So first, why don't we go back and talk about the hard money thing? So for those people who don't know what hard money lenders are, can you explain what that is and kind of what you were paying for rates and fees back then?
Yeah, so hard money lender, it's very different than a traditional 30-year lender. These people, they can get you the money just like cash, within a week or two. And they're not really concerned about your income or your credit. They're more concerned about the property and if it's a good deal or not. And so like this lender in particular, my very first one, he wanted 20% down, and, he wanted me to cover the rehab cost. And so that's why I needed 40 grand to buy that first deal. And he charged me 2 points and like 10%. And so, a point would just be 1% of the total loan. So I can't remember what the total loan was. It was like 130, 140 or something. And then, obviously the monthly interest you got to pay. So it is definitely expensive, but it's worth it if you factor it into the flip.
Yeah, and that's the key right there, right? People are like, well, I would never pay hard money rates, but you just factor it into your numbers, plug it into your numbers when you're doing the math, and if it works, then who cares? Over time you can get better and better rates and fees because you get private lenders or maybe lines of credit or whatever. But heck, if you got to do what you got to do. So some people are still complaining about not wanting to pay a hard money lender, and they haven't done a single deal. So.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, like the second deal I bought, I didn't have 20% to put down. So I found a different hard money lender. He was like, yo, just put 5% down and I'll fund it. But he wanted 4 points to do it. And I'm like, well, he's more expensive, but I'm not going to pass up a deal because I'm worried about a point.
Yep. That's exactly how you got to look at it. Because especially when you're getting started, like you don't have a ton of knowledge and experience to be able to negotiate real well. You kind of just take what you can get and you do it. So, all right. So you went from hard money lenders. Then what is the difference now between a hard money lender and a private money lender? And how did you make that transition?
Yes, a hard money lender is obviously, like a company that does it for a living. A private money lender would be pretty much anyone else. It would be like a friend, a family member, just somebody that you have a personal relationship with that, trusts you and that, is willing to fund one of your deals. And so anything with private money is negotiable. You guys could do 50-50 splits, any kind of split. You could do interest. You could do flat fee. Like it's just whatever you want it to be.
That's awesome. I love private money. I know that's significantly cheaper, generally speaking, better terms. Like when I worked with hard money lenders, the thing, it was like they were so business oriented because I had to be. There was a business, right? When I worked with private money lenders, I was like, yeah, it sounds good. All right, let's do it. That'd be fun. Like everyone's just so much more generally easygoing. So I'm a big fan of that. All right, yep. So I got a bunch more. And David, you can interrupt me if you got cool questions too, but mine are probably not as cool as your questions are. But I'm gonna ask them anyway. How did you scale up in terms of like 5 to 20 to 53 to now 100 in terms of I want to go like through how you find them, how you fund them a little bit, but business wise, was it just you? When did you start bringing in more people to be able to assist with that?
So my first 2015, 16, I was by myself. I was finding the deals. I was the project manager. I was listing them because I'm a realtor. Like I did everything. And Yeah, I mean, I was able to do that with just, that amount of volume. So fast forward to 2017, when I started to do a lot more volume, I had to hire my first guy. And, I need to mention too, I was still playing baseball in 2017. So I actually had to leave and go play baseball. And I had 10, 15 houses being remodeled or being sold or whatever. And so I would be in the dugout or in the clubhouse, answering emails and calls and all this. And then I'd be going to play a game and my mind would be thinking about a deal or something. And then after the game, I'd have all these texts and emails. I'm like, holy crap, this is getting too much. And so that was the first time I just realized hey, if this real estate thing is going to take off, I can't do this alone and I can't play baseball anymore. It's just too much now. And so I ended up leaving baseball last year in July. And, I was content. I'd played 8 years and I was good with it. But I ended up hiring one of my buddies to basically manage all my projects, to, keep tabs on all of them while I was gone playing. And, after I got back from baseball, him and I just went at it together. And we were able to just, do 50 with just me and him only. And so I see a lot of people who, think, oh, I need a huge team to do all this and that. You really don't. That's evidence of it. But, I'll say now doing, we'll do over 100 this year. My team's definitely bigger now. I've got an assistant. I've got 2 project managers. Now my buddy who was with me in 2017 is listing them all, and we opened a brokerage together. Nice. So it's a lot of different things now. But, starting out, it was pretty much just me and then me and him.
That's awesome. That's cool. I like hearing the kind of the business development side, because that's something I struggled with a lot, and I think that kept me back. Is I always wanted to do everything myself. I'm like, well, I'll fix the toilet, and I'll show the unit, and I'll sell the property, and I'll deal with the contractor. And because of that, I could do 1, maybe 2 projects at a time, and I was constantly overworked. I wish somebody would have sat me down and been like, Brandon, you're stupid. Go, hire some people. So, yeah.
Well, the thing that worked for, the thing that worked for me is I don't know how to fix a toilet or anything like that. So I couldn't go fix the house if I wanted to.
Yeah. That's actually, people think that not knowing how to fix things is a hindrance. And I think it's actually a skill. Being really bad at fixing things makes you forced to think like a business owner, versus me. I'm like, well, I can fix a toilet. Let me go over and show you all how it's done. And then I'm crawling around under a house trying to fix pipes. I'm like, what am I doing? Anyway, David, you had something.
Yeah, Ryan's story is a lot like mine. And Ryan, you got an awesome business model going on. We're going to dig more into the details of that for people to hear. But what I love is I started buying houses in other states where I couldn't go fix it even if I wanted to. I couldn't go walk in and rely on my own judgment. I had to rely on other people to do the stuff I wanted to, which ended up being a huge blessing because I learned to get team members involved. I learned to delegate. I learned to only do the thing that was most important for me, the one thing that I needed to get that deal together. And my business scaled faster than everybody else's who was trying to do everything by themselves. And it was hard to separate themselves from, I got to be the guy to do everything. You're in that same position. You and I were talking the other day, and I was saying I used to be sitting at a stop sign, driving from one call to the next and look at my phone, and my agent texted me about an offer, and I'd write back 120,000 and then send it. And then I would drive to the next stop sign and I'm like, what did they say? We're trying to do everything while we're working. You're sitting in the dugout and you're like, well, are they going to put me in the game or not? Let me walk to the back real quick and make this phone call. So you had to rely on other people. And now you're accomplishing what Brandon calls the stack, right? You went from 5 to 20 to 53 to 120. Every year you're doubling or more the production that you did because you've learned the power of leverage and you've removed yourself from the aspects of the business that are not what you're best at. So I just want to commend you and let everybody realize that the fears you have of why you can't get into real estate investing might turn into the strength of your business if you do things correctly, right? You don't want to be the person who does everything. You want to be the person who does one thing really well and find other people whose their one thing is the stuff that you don't really love doing. The guy who fixes toilets wants that job because that's all that he can do. So first off, I think you have the perfect business model. I think more people should be copying it. What I'm really intrigued by is what you've done to remove yourself from the work of the business. So you own a flipping company and you do one role within that company. You don't have the job of a house flipper, which is everything. Can you tell us a little bit about how you structured it and what role you're playing and why you chose that role?
Yeah, so I think to first off, get to the role that I'm in, you have to have experienced the other roles first. And so, like I said, when I was doing it all by myself, I was the project manager, I was the listing agent, I was, finding deals, all those things. And so, I've experienced the other roles. So you have to know what the other roles need in order to train somebody to do it. And so I see all these people all the time, like, I want to create a great system and do this. I'm going to get my project manager, this and that, but they don't even know how to train them because they've never done it. And so I think before you can even create this huge, big company, you have to have experienced those roles first. Now, I don't think you need to be a contractor flipping toilets, but you have to know how to hire a contractor and find a contractor. And so, I learned all those things, and now I'm at the point where I kind of just oversee everybody. I oversee those people who manage those other people. And really my job at this point is to just say yes or no to deals. And so, I get deals and leads sent to me every single day, and I evaluate them, and, I say yes or no. And if I say yes, then it just goes into the machine, and, I'll get a check hopefully 4 months later. So that's kind of how I'm structured right now. And even that could be, delegated out at some point. I could get somebody else to handle all the leads. But, that's the toughest part is, lead generation is the biggest thing with flipping.
Yep.
And so relationships are how I've built my business. So I have relationships with all these wholesalers, with all these realtors. And so it's like they come to me when they have a deal, and it's hard to say, hey, go to my assistant, because it kind of breaks that relationship. So that's the tough part for me.
Yeah, I want to dive into that a little bit. That finding deals right now is hard for everybody generally, but you're buying a dozen houses a month, it sounds like, or maybe not quite that, but like you're buying a good number. So how is it that you can buy 10 houses in a month when a lot of people are saying, I've been trying for 6 months, I can't find a single deal? Like, what are you're doing relationships, you say. What does that mean? Is that the only thing you're doing? Let's talk about that a bit.
Yeah, so starting out, it is very hard to find a deal. Like, it's extremely hard. And my first year, I bought 5, which I thought was extremely good at the time. And what I found in this business is the more relationships you build, it just exponentially grows, because then they tell someone else about you, and it just keeps growing that way. But also, once you get one relationship, as long as you maintain it, that's, it's there forever. And you're going to keep getting more relationships every year. And so now, like, my network is just so much bigger than it was even last year. So I'm still getting, deals from the previous relationships I had, but now I'm getting deals from the new relationships I have. And so it just keeps growing exponentially. And, that's really my business model, is just building relationships with people and providing them value and helping their business grow. And if I'm able to do that, then we're going to do business together. If I'm just in it for the money and like, hey, send me a deal, and I'll say yes or no, it doesn't work like that. Too many people think that.
So when you say an agent is helping you get, like, is this something they list on the MLS and then they call you and be like, hey, we just listed a property, you would like this? Or is this something different?
Yeah, so a lot of times I'll get, what's called pocket listings. Agents will send me them before, they're going to list them on the MLS, and they'll say, hey, you want it for this price? And I'll say yeah or no, or I'll say what price I can do it at. Yeah. So, I get a lot of deals that way, but also I find a lot of deals myself on the MLS. I've got searches set up and all these things, and so I'm making offers on the MLS every day, but, everyone else is making offers on those properties too, right? So it really depends on who the agent wants to pick, because yeah, you might not be the highest offer, but if they know you're going to close and you're not going to BS and you're not going to, try and renegotiate later, that gives you a huge advantage.
I think, and David, you can speak to this as well, I'm sure, but like I find that agents have way more power than I think a lot of times we think they do. A lot of times we just think the highest offer is going to be the one accepted. When you're making an offer on something, well, clearly the highest offer is somebody else, but like if the agent really likes you, like their agent likes you, they have a tremendous amount of sway, because they can use those arguments like, well, that guy did bid 10,000 higher, but I know this Ryan guy, he can close. I've done 8 deals with him in the past year. I think you should go with that. Like, who's the seller going to go with? Of course they're going to go with you, because they're going to most likely take the agent's advice there.
Yeah, that's 1,000% accurate. I mean, as a real estate agent, even just the tone that I use when I'm going over the offer with my clients, I can influence them to go any direction that I think is best. And really, as their fiduciary, I'm supposed to influence them in the direction I think is best. So if I know Ryan is $5,000 less than the high offer, but he's really likely to close. And I'm excited about Ryan's deal, and I'm saying why his offer is so great. And then I talk about the other one. I'm like, well, it's 5,000 more, but you have this, you have this. Is it really worth it? 9 times out of 10, they're going to go with the one that they can tell that I think is the best bet. And investors shoot themselves in the foot when they call the listing agent and they're like, hey, you can double end it. You're going to make more money. And therefore, you better do this and this and this and this. And they just like, beat up that real estate agent, because in general, real estate agents are not respected. People think that they're just a means to an end. You're a key that opens a door, and that's all. And they treat them like that. And I guarantee you, I've seen it. I see the agent's face as the person's doing that just go from smiling to like, I'm waiting for you to shut up so I can hang up the phone. And there's no way you're getting this deal, Yeah. Ryan has figured out the secret sauce. When he talks about relationships, it's treating people right, bringing them value first. I guarantee you, when he's talking to the agents that bring him deals, he's saying things like, what are you doing in your business to generate leads? Here's what we're doing. That could probably help you out with what you're doing. Here's a trick that I've learned, or a software that I use, or a script that I use that really works with people. And he's making them money, which makes them want to make him money. Like, those are the best relationships. And if people could only figure out one thing about business, it would be that. And whether you're flipping houses or flipping couches, you can make money if you figure out the relationship side.
Yeah, that's 100% right, man, because I have so many emails and texts just from agents like, hey, you weren't the highest offer, but you were the one we felt the most comfortable with, this and that. And there's going to be a lot of offers you make where it may not even be 10,000 difference. It might be $1,000, $2,000. And so to the seller, it's like, that's not really a big difference. Like, who am I going to go? Who do I like better?
Yeah, that makes sense, especially when you're competing with other flippers as well. Like, they probably have similar numbers than what you do, and so your offers are probably, not always, but probably in the same ballpark. And that just comes back to the relationship thing. So would you, I don't know if you track this very meticulously, but do you have an estimate on how many offers you typically would make on like on an MLS kind of deal? What percentage get accepted? I mean, are you like 50-50, or are you 1 out of 100?
So I do it a little differently than most people. So I've got auto searches and stuff set up on the MLS, and I probably get about 30 searches sent to me a day. And so I'll review all 30 every single day. And, I can tell just from looking at the address and the price and the square footage, like, okay, this one's not even close to a deal. I'm not even going to worry about it. And so I can go through those 30 in about 30 minutes every day. And, probably maybe 5 out of those 30 are worth actually comping out and looking into. And so out of those 5, I'll just, make an offer on it. I'll send them a text or write them an email. That's the only way I make an offer. I don't go through writing the purchase agreement and, all this stuff, because it's a waste of time if I'm not going to be close. And then when you do send a text or an email, it opens up dialogue to like build that relationship. Because if you just one of these guys who sends an offer, they don't know who you are. It's just a piece of paper. But if you're actually speaking with them, you could feel them out and be like, all right, where do I need to be to get this deal done? Like, what's the seller's motivation? What can we do other than price that will make them want to do the deal? Do they want to rent back? We'll buy it as is. When do they want to close? Like, you can talk about these things when you can contact them directly like that.
I love that. You're not just firing off a bunch of offers, just hoping something gets accepted. You're building relationships. Yeah. Again, it just all comes back to that. That's awesome. All right, so that's just a really fantastic strategy in general. Let's talk about wholesalers, because you said you also get a lot of deals from wholesalers. Can you define what a wholesaler is, and how you find them, and how do you build those relationships?
Yeah, so I had somebody ask me, explain what a wholesaler is in the simplest way, and I just said they're a contract flipper. We flip houses, they flip contracts, and so really, they're targeting all these sellers, and they're trying to negotiate with them and do all the work for you. And, if they get it under contract, they would then assign the contract to you or flip the contract to you for, whatever fee you guys agree upon. And so wholesalers are your best friend, man. Like, they do all the dirty work. You just have to say yes or no. And, I know a lot of new flippers, and I was this way when I started too. They see the wholesaler's fee and they're like, oh, man, you don't deserve to make that much. You're going to make more than me, or whatever the case may be. And it's kind of naive thinking, because what's it matter what they make? Like, I tell wholesalers now, don't even tell me what you make. Just give me what my price is, because I don't want to know, and I don't want you to think I'm trying to take out of your pocket. Like, I'm just going to give you what I can pay. And so I think last year I probably paid like $400,000 in wholesale fees. Wow. And I'm pretty certain I'll pay over $1 million this year in wholesale fees. So I love those guys. I don't care what they make. Like, if the numbers work for me, then let's do business.
That's cool. So where do you find them at? If you're like, not necessarily you, but where does somebody who's listening to this show, I'm like, oh, I want to go find a wholesaler, somebody who does all the hard work for me. What do I do?
Okay, so there's probably 3 real easy ways. Number one is, go to a real estate meetup. I know you guys talk about that all the time. Like, it's true. You're going to find a ton of them there, and, build relationships with them. See what kind of value you can offer them as an investor. The second way is Facebook, man. That's why I'm so active on Facebook. I'm constantly trying to friend request realtors and wholesalers and all these things, because I want them to know who I am. And, you can go on Facebook alone. There's tons of wholesaling groups, and you just go join them and, let them know, like, hey, I'm in Las Vegas and I'm an investor. I'm looking to meet wholesalers. Or you just search for, wholesalers who've already posted in that group. Another way is to just go on Craigslist and call all the bandit signs that you see, because those bandit signs are wholesalers. And then they obviously post on Craigslist too. I mean, there's so many ways, and that's why I wrote the book. All those ways are in it too.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, finding meetups, and then when you find good wholesalers, there's also a lot of people who are just horrible at wholesaling. It would never be. They're not going to be good at it. They're just looking for a get rich quick way, or they went to some guru thing. How do you differentiate between a time waster, like a wholesaler's going to waste all your time, and somebody who's legitimately worth investing your time to train or to help to work with? How do you differentiate that?
Man, I wish I had a great answer for that, but that's a tough one, because I would say probably 9 out of 10 people you meet at a meetup who want to wholesale aren't going to do anything, and that's just the reality of it. And I haven't been to a lot of meetups recently. I know I need to start going back to them and meeting people, because I'll tell you, the last meetup I went to, I met one wholesaler and we've done probably 5 deals together. Yeah. So it's like that meetup, just going and attending that meetup probably made me $150,000.
Yeah,
by just choosing to go there. And so that shows you the power of going and networking. But I've also taken so many meetings, coffee meetings, and people come into my office and they just never do anything. And so it is tough to determine who you want to invest your time in. But I would say always meet everybody regardless. And if they've got persistence and they want to keep meeting with you, or they're asking about deal, if they're asking you the right questions, like, hey, what do you think of this property? Hey, what would repairs be on this? Then that they're actually doing something.
Yeah.
But
great.
Most people, they're not doing anything, so you won't ever hear from them again.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, wholesaling gets prescribed as, oh, you want to learn about real estate investing, but you have no money? Become a wholesaler. It's super easy, and you don't need any money to get started. So you have all these newbies that walk into that realm not having any of the skills that are needed to be a wholesaler that want to get into it. When people complain to me about wholesale fees, I usually tell them, everything's a funnel. Brandon is known for talking about this all the time, right? So we've had this this lapse funnel that we talk about, right? And it's the process of, you take a lead, you analyze it, you pursue it, and then you would succeed by closing on it, right? So in the beginning, at the top of it, you have everybody in the world. They're all some form of a lead. And then you move down and you analyze something. And then you move down even further and you look at, do I want to make an offer? Well, wholesalers are taking that whole first step, the lead, finding people that might want to sell their house, and they're doing it for you. You're jumping into this funnel near the bottom of it where it's very narrow, and most of the hard work has already been done. And you're paying a fee to avoid all of the hardest part. It's finding the deal and getting it under contract, right? That's where all the heavy lifting is done in this deal. And you're paying a wholesale fee, but you're avoiding all the advertising and marketing and labor that you would have to spend to go do that work on your own, right? It's awesome. It's like a meal prep. Somebody makes it for you and you just get it right away. Now, if you have no money and a bunch of time, you're going to cook your own meals. But if you have a job and you're doing something and your business is somewhat successful, it doesn't make sense to stop what you're doing and cook your own meals. You let somebody else cook it, put it in the fridge, and you just go in there and eat it, right? So if you change your mindset about how you think about it, you'll actually make way more money doing things that way. And if you focus on creating systems like what Ryan has done, he's just now feeding something into this machine over and over and over. And the wholesalers are bringing a product that he can just drop right into there. So what I'd like to ask you, Ryan, is can you give us a hypothetical example of a lead comes in and what that process looks like for how your business will process it?
Okay, so let's just say a wholesaler sends me a deal. I've told them all that, hey, all I need is the price, pictures, and the address. If you give me those 3 things, I can tell you what I need. I've gotten to the point where I don't need to walk properties to buy them. After we, if it's really bad or something, we need to go see it in person, make sure that the rehab's what we need to see. But for the most part, with what I buy in Vegas, they're all pretty standard. It's not anything crazy. So they'll send me those, the property with those 3 things, and pretty much I'll just say yes, no, or I'll give them my counter. And that's really as simple as it is. Like, I try and make it so simple for everybody that, like, hey, if you got a higher offer or something, so be it. Like, no hard feelings. It is what it is.
Yeah, that's great. That mentality is just what's needed because, again, it's all a funnel, right? It's all a funnel.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to talk about your systems a little bit as part of the funnel. Let's go into the funnel because I'm obsessed with it, as David Green reminds me oftentimes. Let's talk about like what happens. So you have, let's say a wholesaler contacts you, says, "Hey, I got a deal." Walk us through the entire process. Like who takes that phone call? When do you make the offer? Can you kind of just walk through the journey of a deal to closing?
Okay, so with me, let's just say, I've already built a relationship with the wholesaler. They say, "Hey, Ryan, I got a deal." I say, "All right, great." So they send me those things: price, pictures, address. I'm going to immediately look it up like ASAP because a lot of these other flippers, they I don't know what they got going on, but they won't get back to them until like hours later or even the next day or days later. I'm like, really, whoever's first to commit is going to get the deal. I even have a wholesaler who they blast it out and whoever says yes first gets it. And it literally goes within 15 seconds. I'm not kidding you. That's the type of speed that people are buying at. And so, if a wholesaler sends me a deal, I'm going to immediately drop whatever I'm doing and I'm going to look it up immediately and make sure how the numbers pencil out. So, I'll go and comp it online using, the MLS. I'm a realtor and, make sure that the numbers work. And so my biggest advice is if the price they send you works, just accept it. Do not try and beat them up and try and get a few extra $1,000 out of it or whatever. You're going to hurt yourself in the long term because they're going to be like, "Man, this guy's always beating me up over price, blah, blah, blah." You want to be their best ally. And so if the price works, I'll just say, "Yep, let's do the deal, man." And so at that point, if we say yes, then, they'll send me over the contract, the assignment contract. Then I'll find out what they're making on the deal because the assignment will say. And I love to see that they're making a lot of money, man. I'm not going to be mad that I could have got them down a little more because they got a big assignment. No, I'm like, "Oh, man, sick, dude. That's awesome. You're making 40 G's on this, man. That's great." And, I'm getting the price I want. Dude, it's a win-win. And so we sign the assignment, and typically these guys will require a non-refundable earnest money, and it's usually about $5,000. So, the next day we'll go and deposit the earnest money and, go into contract. From that point, I will then, prepare the deal to one of my private money lenders, and I'll say, "All right, here's the property, here's how the numbers break down, here's the comps, I need the money wired on this date. Do you want to do the deal?" And they'll say yes or no. And so I'll just do it until I find somebody who says yes. But, my private lenders are trained to the point where if they have the money, they're saying yes. They don't even look at the deal half the time. They're just like, "All right, just tell me where and when to fund it." And, usually we have 2 weeks to do a deal. That's pretty much the typical time frame for these guys. And, 2 weeks from now, we go and, close the deal. But in between that time, I like to have one of my project managers go look at the house and make sure that the pictures are what, they said they are. Most of the times the wholesalers are able to do that. But sometimes, you got a bad tenant or somebody who you can't get in the property and you got to buy it with just what you got. So every deal's different that way. And, really if I go to a property, not me, but my project manager goes to a property, he's going there just to make sure it's what we thought. He's not going there to try and say, "Oh, man, this is way different. We need a lower price." Because I know that there are people who do that. And it's just, like I said, man, they're not playing the long game. They're trying to win a little battle instead of worrying about the war. So, yeah, after we close on it, it's a done deal and everyone's happy.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. I love hearing how people kind of work that process from a big picture because a lot of people are stuck in this day-to-day well, okay, what do I do next for a deal? But anyway, kind of stepping out from a 40,000 foot level is kind of cool. So speaking of that, I actually want to dive a little deeper as well in the next segment of the show called The Deep Dive. Deep Dive. All right, so today on The deal deep dive, or is it the deep dive deal? I don't know. We'll call it the deal deep dive. We are going to go into one specific property that you've recently bought, and we're going to ask you 7 questions that we're just going to go real deep into this. So, first of all, you got a deal in mind, by the way? You got something? All right. So the questions are, the first one, how did you find it?
All right, so this deal was an out-of-state deal. I'm doing this for David. He's the out-of-state guy.
All right.
So, I have a few properties in Big Bear, California, and it's about a 3-hour drive from Vegas. And so I just like vacationing up there. The Airbnb's good. It's great. So there's this little town called Baldwin Lake, which is maybe like 10, 15 minutes outside of Big Bear. And so it's so tiny. There's no investors there. It used to be a lake, but now it's dried up. So it's like
Really?
kind of looks like a wasteland. But so I had this contractor hit me up on Facebook. He was like, man, I want to get into wholesaling. I saw you buying Big Bear. I live up here, yada, yada, yada. I was like, yeah, man, let me know. Like, if you ever get a deal or however I can help you, just let me know. And, I didn't think anything of it. That happens a lot. And so probably 2 months later, he goes, Ryan, I got a deal. I was like, all right, tell me about it. He's like, it's in Baldwin Lake. I'm like, okay, I'm not as excited anymore. Like, okay. And so he starts telling me about the deal. He's like, man, I think you'll really like it. Like, it's really good. Like, it's a house and a guest house on an acre of land. I was like, man, an acre of land's a lot, especially out there. And a house and a guest house. I was like, all right, tell me more. And so, he starts telling me about it, and he's like, yeah, it's 150,000. I don't know what it's worth, but you can just run the numbers. And so, I'm running the numbers, and it's tough to get comps out there because there's just not a lot of houses for sale, and it's very unique. It's a house and a guest house on an acre. Like, nobody else has that. And so, I'm looking at the comps, and I'm like, well, I don't know how long this thing will take to sell, being in this kind of remote area. I don't know for sure what it'll sell for, but I know like crappier houses are selling for $250. And so I'm like, let's do the deal. I don't know if you want to ask the other questions.
Sure. Yeah, we'll move on. So you bought it for, the second one was, how much was it? It was is that what you paid for it, 150?
Well, so he ended up telling me it was 150, and I'm like, all right, send me the contract. Let's do it. And he's like, I don't have a contract. I'm like, so we don't even have a deal. And he's like, well, I don't really know how to do the contract. I'm like, all right, man, like, let's go back to step one. So he's like, all right, I'll contact the seller. I gave him a contract that I use. I'm like, just get him to sign this. And the seller was really sketch because he just didn't know what he was doing, right? And so he calls me back. He's like, dude, I'm going to lose the deal. Like, can you save it? I'm like, all right, man. So I called the seller, and, we started talking and stuff. I'm like, look, I'm going to buy it. It is what it is, making him feel confident about the deal. And so we ended up putting it under contract for 140. That was what he had agreed to him with. And, I told him I'd buy it for 150. So I honored that. And I said, look, man, I'll give you the 10 grand once we close. And so we ended up closing about, 2 weeks later. He got, the 10 grand. I mailed him a check. That was his first deal ever. I mean, he was so pumped. Like, you wouldn't believe it, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you didn't, he had to have a lot of trust in you that you were going to give it to, because you didn't have to give him anything, right? But that goes back to the relationship thing. Now this guy is going to do anything in the future, hopefully, for you, because he's going to work hard because, you upheld your words. So super cool. Yeah. All right, next one. This kind of, I guess you kind of already covered, but how'd you negotiate it? Did you do anything fancy negotiation in there, or he took care of it?
Well, he had already agreed to the price with the seller, and so it was just really going in and being like, look, we're going to close this, and there's not going to be, I know my guy, he kind of might have been saying some things that didn't make sense, like, but let me tell you about me. This is what I do, and I own these other properties, so feel confident.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. All right. So we covered finding it, how much it was, how'd you negotiate it? What funding? How did you fund it?
So yeah, after I got under contract, just like the, other deals, I just sent it off to one of my private lenders. I'm like, hey, here's the deal. You want to fund it? Yes, it was done.
And when you do that, let me just step in. You're basically giving them a first lien position, correct? And correct. They are funding. How much are they, your private lenders, typically giving you? All of it, all plus repairs, a piece of it? How's that usually working now for you?
So, any private lender I bring on, I let them know that they got to fund everything. Like, I want to be no money out of pocket on all these deals. And so they'll fund the purchase, the escrow fees, the rehab, and then I've got them to agree to take their interest on the back end. So I'm not making any monthly payments either.
Yeah.
They get everything accrues and they get it when it sells.
That's cool. And that's hard to get. And people are listening to that, they're probably like, that's amazing. No money down and no payments, right? But you got to build up trust to be able to establish that. It's unlikely, unless it's like your mom, you're going to get those kind of deals.
100%.
Yeah, but with relationships, again, just definitely the theme of today's show, you can accomplish almost anything. So that's awesome. All right.
Well, and that's why you want to stick with it, because even though you may pay hard money fees in the beginning, with every hard money deal you do, you add another one under your belt, you get a little bit better, and you get one step closer to getting into private money. The more private money deals you do, the more private money lenders you get, the bigger you can scale. Like when you only think about the money you're making, you're being very short-sighted, because with every deal you get new opportunity, and that's something you have to pay attention to as well. Ryan, do you think you could very quickly explain how you have title set up, having somebody put like a first lien mortgage on a property? Is that something that's very lengthy, or is that something a new investor can get done really quickly?
No, it's pretty easy. And so, basically when you're soliciting private money, or not soliciting, maybe that's not the right legal word, but, talking about it with somebody, you're just going to explain to them, like you said, Brandon, you're going to put a first position lien. So in the event of worst case, like I just totally don't perform, you're going to be able to foreclose on me and take the property. So they have that secured asset. As far as the paperwork, I can see why a lot of people would be like scared of like, hey, I don't even know what to do. That's what your title company's for. Your title company can write the note and deed of trust for you, and it's not that expensive.
And your private money lenders are paying for that service also, so you're not doing anything. This is why this is such a great way to buy real estate. I love it. Okay.
Exactly.
So with this deal specifically, what did you do with it? Did you flip it? Did you rent it out? Was it a BRRRR strategy?
So after we bought it, I learned, the reason I brought up this deal is because I learned a lot about California. And so we ended up flipping it, but there was a tenant in it. And so like in Vegas, typically you just got to serve a 30-day and that gets them out of there. But with California, if they've lived there like over a year, you got to serve them a 60-day. And so we had to wait 60 days before they left. And, it took them a long time. They'd been living there for a while and they were paying way under rent. So they weren't happy about it. And so, after we were finally able to get them out there, we went in there and the rehab was about 20 grand. It was a very simple rehab. And the guy who did the rehab was the guy who brought me the deal. He was a contractor. And so it was easy for me. Like I already had it all in place with him. I'm like, all right, you can do the rehab. You'll make money that way too. So he finished the rehab. It probably took, it took longer than I wanted. It probably took about 2 months. But, when you're in these like remote towns, it's hard to find, people who can do things quick. And so, after 2 months, we put it on the market. And I'm looking at the comps. And I'm talking to my local realtor out there. And it's funny, I asked her opinion before I bought the deal. I go, hey, what do you think about this property? She goes, Baldwin Lake? No way. Like, that you do not buy in Baldwin Lake. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm looking at it. It looks like there's no way I lose. And, she's like, all right, like, buy it. And then we'll list it, whenever. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy it. And so when we go to list it, I'm looking at the comps and she's looking at the comps and we're like, all right, let's list it for 300. Like, I think we could get 300 for it. I'm like, okay, that's kind of what I see too. So we list it for 300. And this was the tough part of the deal because in a remote town like that, I don't know how quick things are going to move, especially because it's a weird product, really. And to my surprise, within a week, we had 2 offers. I was like, dude, I was expecting at least like 30, 60 days on the market. So I was super surprised. And one of them was a loan offer for, I think like $290. Then we got another cash offer for like $280. I was like, okay, let's try and negotiate with the cash and get this thing moved. So we ended up negotiating back and forth. We accepted $290. I then found out that the cash offer was the person who lived across the street. And I'm like, what the heck? And she was like, yeah, I was out putting my lockbox on there. And the people said, oh, is this house for sale? And she's like, yeah. And then, they start talking. And she ended up, finding that buyer and getting both sides of the commission.
Nice.
And which I'm totally happy with. I don't care. Like, so we ended up agreeing at $290. We ended up finding out the septic tank was like all busted up and all this crap. And so we gave them a price reduction down to $280, but they closed it, with like 2 weeks later. And so, Yeah, man, it was a sweet deal just all around because it was like, man, that's just such a weird remote area, such a weird house, all this stuff. And, agent got to work both sides, even though she didn't think I should have bought it. Yeah. And so it was a good deal all around.
So cool. You sold for $290. That was the outcome. You exited.
And
then
$280 after the repair credit
thing. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. What lessons did you learn from this deal particularly?
Well, as far as California goes, I learned a lot of rules I didn't know about. So, I didn't know about the 60-day thing. And then I didn't know, because here in Vegas, when you just sell a house. You don't have to claim your capital gains or anything. In California, they make you claim it right there and then.
We withhold it.
Really?
Yeah, I'm like,
I didn't know that.
I'm like, what is this?
The title companies look at it and they basically say, "Oh, this is your capital gains. We're going to keep it." You don't even get that money at all.
Like they take it right away. I was
you're
like,
giving
what?
a nice interest-free loan to the government for a year or 6 months. That's insane.
Yeah, dude. I was like, at the title company when they first asked me about it, they're like, "Yeah, what'd you make on it?" I'm like, "What's it matter?" Yeah. And they're like, "We got to calculate your capital gains." I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, you got to pay California also 12%. I was like, what? I'm not even a resident of California, man. And that was a learning lesson. I'm like, dude, that's a bummer. But obviously I'm not going to not flip it because, we ended up making $70,000 on it.
Awesome.
And then California took its chunk, but it's all good.
That's California. I'm getting taxed by Cali. That's exactly how. It's bad out here. But your profit margins are so big, like what you said. You're not going to do it. You made $70,000 on that deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love hearing cool stories like that. And again, there is some risk there, right? When you're doing a small town. I invest in a small town, and I flipped. And sometimes, I had a house sit on the market once for a year, 12 solid months, because it was a weird house in a nice area of a not nice town. And so there just wasn't any buyers. Nobody wanted it. And this is also 2012, which was a horrible time to try to sell a house. But you know what? No risk it, no biscuit.
And I don't think anyone else would have bought that house either. Even the realtor was like, "Don't buy it." So you are taking a risk for sure.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing through that. That was fun. I love going through those deep dives. I feel like that's probably my new favorite segment of the show because I love just hearing stories of deals. So, but we're not quite done yet. We got to move on to the next segment of the show, which we lovingly refer to as our fire round.
Fire round.
It's time for the fire round.
All right, let's get to today's fire round. These questions come direct out of the BiggerPockets forums, which of course you can access day or night, 24/7. There's 2 million posts in there right now. It's crazy. And we're going to take a small sampling, 4 out of 2 million, to ask Ryan today. So let's go this one. I'm gonna shorten this one. So basically, an investor who happens to be Brandon Turner, me, but recommended to this person that to buy a property and see if you can increase the value of the property 10%, like a rental property, start with 10% increase of the value. How do you accomplish that? What's the best way to quickly increase the value of a property cheap?
On the cheap?
Yeah, what's the smallest amount of money? Basically, the question is what's the least amount of money you can put into something to hopefully get the highest value increase on it?
Well, I've got a few rentals, but I'm not much of a rental investor, so I'm not the best guy for this question. But I'll say little small things that we do in flips are, with a kitchen, right? If you've got a nice, the cabinets are in good shape, but maybe they're the old oak. I mean, you can paint those things and they will look extremely nice. And I mean, it costs $1,000, and you do that and you throw granite, you could get away with $2,500 and you got a totally new kitchen.
Yep.
So
I
think that'd probably be the quickest way.
That is a perfect example. Yeah, that's what when I mentioned this, I wrote a book a while back called 7 Years of Seven-Figure Wealth, and I said in there, if you can increase the value of your house 10% when you buy it, buy some improvements, and that really is paint the outside of the house, do some landscaping, paint the kitchen cabinets. So little things like that can really dramatic, or add a bedroom, take an extra living room, add a bedroom.
I should have thought of that. That's great.
That's another anyway.
Yeah. In my book, I talk about upgrade hacking, and those are some of the big ones. Painting a cabinet is, no one likes to do it because it's kind of labor intensive, but it makes such a big difference. Those oak cabinets are just an eyesore. And then you can pay $50, $75 and throw some of the, what do you call, the little finishing, the knobs that you're going to pull on.
Yep.
Yeah. It makes a huge difference. And people don't realize how cheap granite is compared to what it used to be. It used to be like $10,000 to put granite in a kitchen, and like everyone still thinks that way. And now you can buy slabs of granite for like $800 and just pay someone a couple thousand to put them in a lot of the time. So those are great answers.
I don't know about you guys, but in Vegas, you could get a slab of granite for like $130.
Wow.
That's cheap. Yeah.
That's cool.
Okay. Next question. And I'm interested to hear how you answer this because I don't think that the way they're asking is the way that you would handle it. They want to know, what are the common signs that a property has issues with its foundation? And when scoping out a potential property, likely a fixer-upper, what are the tricks and techniques that you use to quickly spot check or eyeball those issues?
Okay, so obviously, this is going to sound funny, but when you're looking for a bad foundation, it should be pretty obvious. Like you're walking through it and it's like, oh man, like this floor is pretty wavy, or this floor is definitely like sloping or something like that. The other thing you can look for is cracks in the wall. And so if you see a bunch of cracks everywhere, you know that there's something going on. Now, it's tough to say like how serious of a problem it is. Like I've sold plenty of houses that had bad foundations. You got to just really, know from experience, but a quick and easy way. And so I think this is what they're looking for, is to look at how big the crack is. If it's like a small hairline crack, then you're going to know like, hey, it's not that bad. If you've got a crack the size of, a quarter or a coin, then you know that like, all right, man, this is a big deal. Like, run away if you got something like that, or really plan for a huge foundation issue.
Yeah, that's really good. And of course, like, if you're even unsure, even remotely, like hire somebody in there that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, get an inspection, get a foundation guy out there.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'd be like in different areas too. A foundation issue, like if you got a basement issue or there's like some foundation issue, that you might be looking at $100,000 fix. But in my area, all our houses are built on what they call like a post and beam or post and pier or whatever. Anyway, like jacking up a house is like literally you go underneath the house, take a little bottle jack that you get for $20, jack it up and slide some shims under. Like it's that easy. So like,
wow.
I buy lots of houses that are like sloped and funky because it's like, I can pay a guy a couple $1,000 and he'll level the whole thing. So just knowing your area, knowing your stuff. So anyway, cool. Good question there. Next one. I love this one because this is the exact thing that's happened to me. Well, not quite exact, but pretty close. How do you deal with bad neighbors? We just listed our latest flip, and the neighbor is crazy. She screamed at our septic guy and our project manager. Today, I received feedback from a buyer's agent that she came right up to the potential buyer today and screamed in their window, "Get the F out of here." Needless to say, I'm a little concerned. Any ideas on what I can get this lady to relax and let me sell the house? Offer her cash for being nice or some kind of incentive?
Oh man, I'm laughing because that has happened to me many times.
Yeah.
And so like I've got this flip going on right now where literally both neighbors are like crackheads. And so they keep going in the home while we're trying to fix stuff. I'm like, dude, how the heck do we fix this problem? And, I buy a lot of homes too in, not so nice areas. And so, you get the problem of vandalism and all that stuff. So it kind of all relates. But I would say for her particular problem with the neighbor, seriously, probably cash is the best thing. Like if you just go to her and you say, hey, here's the deal. I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars, but I'm going to pay you when the house closes. Like I'll give you, $100 right now in good faith, and I'll pay you another $500 once the house sells. And then, if she's that crazy, $500 probably get her to shut up, So I think money talks really. You can't go give her a gift basket. She ain't gonna care.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's like, it's like cash for keys, but it's cash for crackheads, right? Like you can't get this person be quiet. Pay him off. That's really good. Yeah.
Quit taking my copper. Just take my money.
That's so much better than my answer. I would have been like, I'd put a hungry Doberman inside and let them figure out when they go, this isn't a good house. This is why Ryan is so smooth and I am not. It's a good answer. All right, last question, and it is a great question. So I'm curious to hear how you answer this. How do you find a good contractor?
Yeah, so especially when you scale, finding contractors is a really hard part of this game, man. The number one thing I would say is referrals are your best friend. Like if somebody's already used them, then that means more than anything else. So the number one thing I would do is go post on Facebook right now, hey, I'm looking for contractors. Who's got some referrals? And that'll get you at least one. If you have 100 friends, somebody will say one. Another thing you could do is, I heard Jay Scott say it a million times, like go to Home Depot, go sit there and just wait for people and introduce yourself. That's a good way. Another thing I do is, I'll be just driving through the city, and if I see a dumpster, that tells me they're working on the house. So I'll just go knock on the door and be like, yo, hey, I'm a real estate investor. Are you a contractor? What do you do? And then we'll get to talking, and they'll say, yeah, I can do this, or I know somebody. If you get a no, always be like, all right, well, do you know somebody who can do this for me? Always try and get the most information you can out of people. So those are a few ways.
In other words, it's like a funnel, you could say. There's a lot of potential contractors at the top, and you filter them down to find the one that's going to work on your deal.
Yep.
Look at that. David's over there really impressed right now. I can see it in his eyes.
Someday Brandon's going to write a book called Funnels, and it's going to sell 10 million copies because he's been hyping it for like the last 10 years every single time he talks about it.
It's going to be called Everything's a Funnel. It's going to be like
what's that movie?
Yeah.
Like a circle.
Yeah,
That is.
Yeah, exactly. I don't remember what movie that is either. It's I know what you're talking about though. Shoot, that's going to bug me until I know.
I think it's Adam Sandler, maybe. I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm going to look it up later. Anyway, we got to move on. Let's get to our famous four. The same 4 questions that we ask every guest every week. Number 1, Ryan, favorite real estate related book other than your own?
Other than my own, man, that's tough. Okay. No, and you didn't pay me to say this, man, but I got to give it to your low and no money down book.
Yes. People haven't said that in a while. It's been a while, so thank you. I'll send you your $20 later.
They need best $20 I spent, man, because I'm telling you, like I said, when I first started, that was the thing that was holding me back, and I think that's what holds so many people back is like, where do I get the money? And credit to you, man, because if I didn't read that book, it's like I really don't know where I'm at today. So Thank you.
Well, thank you. That's super, super nice.
Hate to interrupt your guys' little love fest here, but the next question. What is your favorite business book?
Favorite business book. So, as I was listening to all these podcasts all these years, I've thought about these questions, and my answer always changes because it's like I read a new book and I'm like, that's my new favorite book. And so I'm like, man, what am I going to say? So I'm not going to give a generic answer, but I'll say I really enjoy reading books about other CEOs and things like that because, systems and everything are great, and there's a ton of great books on, how to delegate and all this stuff. But I want to know, what these guys went through, to build up these huge billion-dollar companies. And so, I recently read Jeff Bezos' book, Elon Musk's book, but my favorite one was reading Phil Knight's Shoe Dog.
Oh, cool.
That's definitely my favorite business book right now because I'm a big Nike guy, being an athlete. And it's like my second dream is to get a Nike deal somehow. If anyone works for Nike right now and they want to, give me some gear, and you don't even have to pay me. Just give me a deal on paper, and that's my dream.
Gary Vaynerchuk, now who we had on the show a while back, he's got a deal with I think it's K-Swiss or some, I don't know the brands, but anyway, he's got he got a shoe deal, and he has actually a Gary V brand shoe now. So I'm thinking we should bring that into real estate. You guys could wear Ryan shoes or David Green shoes.
I don't even need a shoe. Just give me gear and I'm good.
There you go.
That's a good point. It's not just athletes that have shoes. Like Kanye West has shoes. Rappers are getting shoes. At what point is that going to stop? It's like, this is my favorite Instagram follow, and they have their own shoe, and I can go buy that.
Kevin Hart, The Rock, they all got
that's
these
weird
deals and stuff. So that's my goal.
And we're almost as big as The Rock, so pretty close.
Yeah, we're close. We're close, definitely. About 100 pounds, I'll be there.
All right, Ryan, what are some of your hobbies?
Hobbies, man. So I love playing basketball. I haven't been playing in a while because I was busy writing the book, but, I love to at least play once a week. Now that I'm done playing baseball, I've been coaching high school baseball the last couple of years, and I just love being able to be with those guys and still be around the game and to give back and, give these guys some, knowledge and everything like that. I serve a lot of stuff at my church. I lead a lot of men's groups and missions and stuff. So, between, sports and faith and business, that takes up a lot of my time. And then, me and my wife like to travel a lot too.
Cool. Love it. All good stuff. All right, my last question. What do you think separates successful real estate investors from those who give up, they fail, or they just never get started?
So for me, the number one thing is discipline. People just don't have the discipline to do the things they need to do. And so whether it be hey, I'm going to start working out every morning. Like, you guys had Hal Elrod on, and I read his book, a few years ago when you guys had him on the podcast. I was like, whoa, like, this is cool. And it's like, so I've committed myself every day for the last, 2.5 years, 3 years to doing a miracle morning every day. And it really has changed my life, like in terms of just being disciplined to read, to work out, to, do all the things he talks about. And I see so many people and I tell them that I'm like, hey, go read a real estate book or, something, and then come talk to me, or go read my book and then come talk to me. And then it doesn't happen. Yep. And it's like, how do you not have the discipline to do that? It doesn't make sense. And then, it could be with like, hey, from this time slot, I'm strictly going to go prospect leads, or I'm strictly going to, for the next week, I'm going to go meet one agent every single day. I'm going to take them out to coffee, and just other things with discipline. And really for me, I learned that as an athlete. Like, it takes extreme amounts of discipline to become a professional. You have to, train every day. You got to eat right. You got to practice. You got to be with coaches and mentors, and you got to be learning, and you got to just mental training. Like, so much discipline went into being an athlete that, when I got into real estate, I was like, dude, like, normal people are succeeding in this. Like, this is like, nobody has the type of discipline athletes have. So I'm like, man, if I just apply this to real estate, who knows where it'll take me. So discipline is the number one thing I think people need to really start implementing.
I love that answer. I don't think anybody said discipline, at least not in a long, long time, but that's so true. Yeah. Yep. You made an interesting point there. I think, like, people a lot of times will ask me out to coffee, and they'll ask David out to coffee, and they ask you out to coffee, right? I think it's going to be my new rule is, like, if you haven't read one of my books, I'm not going to go to coffee, because that means you might not be disciplined, or listen to it, or like maybe they're not a reader. Listen
100%.
To it. Yeah. Otherwise, dude. Like, I love that.
Yeah, that's why I wrote the book. It's like, dude, do not ask me a question that's already in the book.
Yep.
Like, then you could talk.
Well, that's wise, because the reason most people are asking us if they can talk to us or take us to coffee is they're hoping we have that like magic bullet that they've been missing, and they don't have to go do the work or be disciplined. They can just get it from us, and then they'll know what to go do. And that is not how life works. Ryan would not be where he is if he didn't go through the process of just striving for this goal of being a professional baseball player. And the work he had to put into doing that with a very small chance, just mathematically, of succeeding. Yep. Like, you didn't hit that goal, but that sets you up to do even better in this goal, right? So like, you needed that process. That's what made you successful. And trying to skip out on that and try the easy road or the shortcut never worked. You got to go through that process and build yourself up. So I think that's exactly right. Like, that's what we should start saying. We should make a pact that, like, anyone who asks us for our time, it's tell me 3 things you learned from the book that I just read. And if they can't answer right away, you're just like, yeah, you need a book. You don't need a coffee.
That's funny.
Yep.
Deep. All right. So speaking of the book, tell us about the book. And, David, you want to ask the last question?
No, you started it. Go ahead and finish.
Right. Speaking of the book, where can people get it? What is it about? And then tell us more about where they can connect with you at.
Okay, so the book is called Flip Your Future. I just released it a couple weeks ago, and unfortunately, it's already sold out on Amazon, which is like a good thing, but also a bad thing. I'm like, man, like, why are you guys not like prepared for this? And they're like, oh, you're a new author. Like, we don't know how many to stock. I'm like, obviously people want it. Like,
if it makes you feel any better, that happens to us on every book that we come out with at BiggerPockets. Every time Amazon doesn't buy enough, within the first like 20 minutes, it's like, oh, it's gone. Sorry, it's gonna be a week. But this show doesn't come out for a few weeks from now, so it might be back.
Hopefully they have it in stock.
Yeah.
So you can pick it up on Amazon, and it's really just takes you every aspect of flipping that we talked about, that's allowed me to scale to where I am, talking about how to find money, how to find deals, how to network, have relationships, how to manage contractors, estimate repairs. Like, I really tried to just make it as simple as possible. Like, it should really take about 3 hours to read the whole book. And I just kind of took all the fluff out of there, and it's like, hey, here's all the information you need. Like, don't worry about all the other stuff, because people get caught in the details too much. Like, they want to know every single little thing. And it's like, no, you just need like the big picture of it. And if you do those, you'll be, you could do it. So that's why I wrote it. It's on Amazon. If you want to connect with me, I'm very active on social media. So if you go to ryanpineda.com, it has a link to all my social media profiles. It has a link to the book, all the stuff that I've got going on. So that's the easiest way to find me is there.
Perfect. Perfect. All right, dude. Well, this is a lot of fun. This is one of the most fun I've had on a podcast in a long time. I mean, I love every episode we do, but I don't know.
Hey, you're not
really
just
cool
saying
story.
that, right?
No, I'm just saying this was awesome. This was awesome. Really enjoyed your story, and you're definitely somebody to be admired. So keep it up. Keep up the good work, and we'll have to connect in the future.
Awesome, guys. I appreciate you having me, man. It's been a dream come true to be on the podcast.
That's awesome. Well, thanks. See you around.
That's what we do here.
All right, and that was our show with Ryan Pineda. I really like that guy a lot. Like I really, it's somebody I want to build a good relationship with myself because I'm like, man, I could learn a lot from him. He's crushing it.
Don't you just feel like, oh, the world isn't so bad? Ryan's just such a positive dude. He makes you believe that you could do anything. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too. It's funny because, he got started largely from reading my stuff, and now I'm like, well, he's way outpaced me, I think. He's, at least with that flipping stuff, he's just crushing it. I'm like, I want to be half the flipper he is.
I believe Yoda would say that you have accomplished the goal of every great teacher is when your student surpasses you yourself. So great job.
Wouldn't Yoda say, like, your students surpassed you, they have?
Yeah, so it would have been said differently.
Teacher,
great you are, Brandon.
Well, thank you. All right, well, we got to get out of here, and I'm heading to lunch right now with a BiggerPockets member who wanted to hang out, and he came to me with a couple of deals and said, hey, I wanted to see if you're interested in buying a couple of deals that I'm putting together. That was a good way to make that introduction to me, and anybody you're trying to connect with. Offer value, like we talked about in the quick tip today. So build relationships, get out there, go crush it, and let us know if you're enjoying this show, if you're enjoying David, or if you really can't stand the guy, let me know privately and secretly.
Or if you want me to completely supplant Brandon and never let him talk, you can say that as well. Say that too. We can just keep Brandon for his beard and his face, and I can be here for all the content.
That is true. All right, well, let's get out of here. We'll see you guys over on social media or on the webinar or wherever. We'll see you around.
Hope you guys enjoyed this show. This is David Green for Brandon Grandmaster Yoda Turner. Signing off.
You're listening to BiggerPockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.